it was a few months ago now, but I was on a podcast with a guy down in England, and he was like, "Oh, have you got like a microphone?" You know, the same reasons. And I was like, "No, but my brother does, because my brother does occasional like voice acting work.
All right,
so
sweet.
He does that from home. So he's got this like really good, really big microphone, and I took it off him like a week before the podcast because he didn't need it. And I was like, okay. And he's like, just plug it in, you know, make sure this light's on, blah, 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 blah. You're good to go. The guy will tell you on the other end if he needs to do anything. And then like 20 minutes before recording the podcast, I realized my laptop didn't have a USB. I was like, no. I was like, I totally ruined it for this. Like, he managed to sort it out pretty good, but even my mum was like, were you ill? And I was like, no, it's because I was speaking into a bloody MacBook. That's what it was. But, oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I always try to ease into these because, like, when I started them, and maybe when I did things previously, which were just with shitty USB mics, like real back in the day, like I would always like feel the need, and I see it with people in here as well, where they feel like they need to have like a presenter persona to like open up.
Yeah.
When I always listen back to myself and I always just find it really cringe. So what I kind of do is just kind of like, we're just having a chat just now, and I'll just cut somewhere along the line of where like I think it seems natural.
Well, like I've got a YouTube voice, and it's I can't. I've only ever rewatched one video that I've made because I feel ill listening to myself. It's absolutely horrendous. Because like my wife and that, my wife's like, why don't you put yourself on camera? And I was like, I hate those guys.
Yeah.
No, I don't hate those guys, but that's not me. I'm not like, hey guys, I'm here at Pataudry. Like, absolutely not for me.
There's almost like an inner kind of self-conscious sense of, am I being vain by doing this?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly,
like,
100%. Literally, like every time I record like myself for a video, because it used to be a case of I would just record scenery or outside the stadium, but then sometimes there wouldn't be much movement or anything like that, so it just looks like a photo. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just have myself walking, you know, across the screen or whatever. So people's eyes are, oh, there's a guy walking, I'm listening, that sort of thing. But like, it's always from like the back. Like you only see the back of my head. Like, so I'm just like, no, I don't want to, you know, just be cutting down this random road in Rothes, smiling. It's like, nah, walking away from the camera every single time.
I mean, it is mad. Like some of the kind of, I really despise this word. Like I really can't stand the word content because it is such associated with like
cringe,
the influencer era, right?
Yeah.
Of like, you know, the kind of characters that we're talking, maybe at like the bigger top echelon level, you know, the people that are ending up having boxing matches against retired MMA fighters and stuff like that. Well, I'm looking forward to see Lee in there in 10 years' time, man.
Oh God, honestly, I'm just praying for one of the Paul brothers to just actually have like a real fight with somebody. Yeah. Please. Like, I remember, because I was one of those idiots that thought Conor McGregor was going to beat Mayweather.
Yeah.
And putting like 50 quid on it. And I'd be like,
here, it's worth a punt though.
Yeah. And like, I like at the weekend, I put a wee pound on all the Highland League teams in Elgin to qualify from the Scottish Cup at the weekend.
This sounds like the accumulator of the 21st century.
It was like 3.5 to 1. Wow. I think Fraserburgh, Elgin.
Oh, this was separate from the Conor McGregor beating Floyd Mayweather.
Oh no, yeah. Sorry, that was years ago. That was years ago when I was even worse with money and anything like that. No, literally the one just passed. So it was like Brecon, Fraserburgh, Elgin. I'm sure there's another Highland League team I'm missing. Who went through? There must be one more that I'm missing.
Forest.
Absolutely not. We're like, you know what? We're not terrible this year. We're better than we have been the last couple of years.
Oh, trust me. I mean, I'm someone that is. I've tried to get back into watching Lossy over the years. It's been difficult because I work a lot of weekends, and that's when the games are.
Same with me, yeah.
But like, it is so soul destroying, and especially since like when I do like the football journal stuff, and we've had quite a few people in that have, you know, were in the Lossy glory days in the 90s, and it's been like, I look at the table from like 92 to like 97, 96 kind of time, and Lossy are finishing second, third, fourth, with teams like Ross County, Inverness, like teams they have no right to be competing with.
It's incredible.
And it's went from that just to where they are now, which for years it was just finish above Fort William. Like,
literally. And now it's finish above Rothes.
Yes.
Because Strathspey are minted now.
Yeah. Well,
inexplicably.
That's the thing. Like, Lee had Richard Hastings on, and it was around the time of like the 6-0 drumming. So we're like, this is going to be an interesting comment section when this drops. But thankfully, you kind of got spared from that. But I'm trying to think back to when we first met, and I'm thinking it's
Chris's book launch. Yeah.
Because I have a memory. It was how that all kind of came about. It was a bit of like workception for me of how like I personally met Chris. Is I had done a video for a boxer ahead of a fight that he had coming up at the town hall, and me and Lee went.
And Chris was on the door, wasn't he?
He might have been. He was definitely in. He was sat next to us with Craig Christie. So obviously, I produced Lee's podcast. I'd done this video for the boxer. Craig had been on the football journals a couple months beforehand, and he was with Chris. And I think he said to Lee, "There's this guy that's just done a book on football and mental health. He's one of my colleagues. He was maybe looking to promote it like via a podcast and that." And then him and Lee ended up chatting that night, and it was weird because there was like me and Lee who had done like the Northeast Corner and I guess the football journals in a way, even though I'm not really. I'm part of it, but more from a technical standpoint than a conversation.
Well, I remember messaging you being like, "We're excited to come on your podcast." Yes. And you were like, "I'm the studio."
Yes. Do you know how many times I've had to respond? Like there's people every week being like, "Can this player come on the football journals?" And I'm like, that's not my decision, man. Like the amount of times I have to give out Lee's number. And I mean, I remember that night, it was kind of weird because it was like we had like inadvertently created like a Northeast media booth for this fight, because there was like the Northern Scott group and then there was like us, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Press and Journal were about there somewhere as well.
They would have been.
And then obviously Chris came on the football journals, and I wasn't really expecting this, but I got an email through, and I think Chris had my email because I gave him a business card. As I was mentioning before we started doing this, I said, if you're ever thinking of doing an audiobook, give me a shout. And I got an email saying, "Hi Ryan, I'd like to invite you and Lee to my book launch at Elgin City." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's actually pretty cool." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Usually I'm just kind of like, obviously, like I'm friendly with everyone that comes in here, whether it's a client or a guest or whatever it may be. But you know, no one's ever went to the lengths of, you know, do you want to come to like my event, if you know what I mean, afterwards? So I thought it was quite like unique, and I was like, yeah, I'll go. And Lee was like, yeah, we'll go. And it was, I remember it was Champions League final night.
Yes.
And
Dortmund, Madrid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I remember, I think Lee's fiance had something on that night. So I think he had his son.
He did, yeah.
And he was running late because he was in Burger King. Now I'm already there because I'm so bad for like fearing of being late that I turn up too early. And then that inadvertently means I have to wait, which is like the most annoying thing in the world to me. Like, just, I always feel very awkward just waiting for something to like begin.
Yeah.
And I remember because we had that conversation via Instagram, because I said, I'll see you at the book event or something like that. And I remember getting there and Lee was like, "I'm going to be another 10 minutes. And I think everyone's quite a socially anxious person when they go into a room full of people they've never met before, if you know what I mean.
Especially because I'd never even been in that. I didn't really know that level of Elgin City. Like, I knew the bar. I've been in the bar plenty of times. I didn't know there was an upstairs. They were like, "Oh yeah, just go upstairs." And I was like,
yeah,
I don't know where the stairs are.
Yeah.
What if I go through the wrong stairs and I get tackled by Dejon Golding?
Yeah.
Like what am I going to do?
But like, I remember just like, he was like, "I'm going to be another 10 minutes. Now 10 minutes in that scenario feels like 10 hours. And I'm like, "Oh, Lee, you fucker. Like, why have you got to be a dad and be
we can swear.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
fabulous.
totally, man. Trust me, like, it won't be this episode that gets this rid of anyway. There's many. But yeah, it was cool because actually I was like, I'm going to have to take a seat, because I said to Chris, "Do you know where the Money Mental Health guys are?" And I was like, "I'll go introduce myself to you guys," because I knew you were coming on the football journal soon. And then I think we spoke about Man United, saying that we were like quite positive about how we're how Ten Hag. That turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah. And I was wearing my Stone Roses Man United kit as well, which I was like over the moon with. I haven't worn since.
Yeah, some of the collections they come out with are phenomenal. Really,
it is. They're basically a marketing company at this point, and I'm all for it, to be honest. You know, I got like 15 years of good. Like, if I have to eat shit for the next 10, but they release good stuff.
At least they're keeping us like entertained in some way. Like, you know, like
watching the Hindenburg go down, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't take your eyes off it. It's terrible.
You know what? It's like, I can understand getting beat by big teams, but do we really have to get rinsed like that? Like, do we have to be like, because the amount of 5-6, 7-0,
Yeah.
like the amount of pain, because the amount of Liverpool fans that I know is unbearable. And like, I always try to be quite respectful. Like, if United have ever beat them 2-1.
Yeah, but you'll know as well as I do, the Liverpool fans only came out of the closet during COVID.
Oh, yes.
But, and they're like, oh, by the way, oh, yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan. It's, oh, yeah, where were you in 2014?
Yeah.
Where were you when you were wearing Warrior kits?
Yes, it was all interesting around 2012 when none of them liked football that time.
Exactly, and it was, can Liverpool get relegated? Or,
yeah, the days of Roy Hodgson and Dalglish Part 2.
Paul Konchesky at left back.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
My idol. Bald left backs. That's my niche. My niche love.
But so I remember sitting down at this, and I think I sat next to, I think it was people to do with the Scottish Mental Health Association or something like that.
Oh, Sam H, was it?
Yeah, Sam H, yeah. And they were talking about, he did a podcast recently, and like my ears could have pricked up, and it was like it's a guy that runs it every 2 weeks, Lee Stewart. So tempted to be like, I'm the producer, by the way.
Yeah. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah. See all that editing? That's actually me. But yeah, no, that was like a really cool event. And then, from there, you've been in here a few times. I think you were actually meant to be on Butterbriggs Beat as well, weren't you? But
something popped up last minute. I'm hopeful I'll get back on again in the future because I'm loving listening to Chris, and he's just taken that and run with it. Honestly, seeing his confidence fly over the last few years has been fantastic. I have got a backlog of episodes to listen to because I don't have Spotify.
Oh, right. Okay. You're an Apple Podcasts guy.
I'm an Apple Podcast, and believe it or not, I refuse to pay for Spotify out of principle, so I still have an iPod. Yeah. I'm not disparaging the football hipster wank, am I?
Yeah. It seems to be quite a common theme with the retro stuff in your arsenal, right? With the cameras and all that as well, which we'll get to later. But like, I believe
I'm a sucker for nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I think everybody is to a degree.
100%. I think that's like everyone. No one deals with change well, I would say, right? Like, obviously, like, it's maybe not as destructive for some people as maybe others, but it definitely feels like it's uncomfortable, to say the least, right? There is like that want of, when everyone's an adult, they wish they were still a kid in some aspects of their life, right? When it comes to like, obviously like bills and responsibilities and all that kind of fun stuff. But like, I funnily enough, mentioning Butterbriggs Beak, I think that's actually going to become a video podcast.
Oh, class. That'd be great.
The next episode is.
Would that be on YouTube?
Anyway. Yeah. I've discussed it with Chris about trying to get it on YouTube, so it's just as simple as getting him in here and letting me do it for him.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, that was our first meeting. I suppose like the kind of first thing that I want to ask you, and I know it's not just you that does the money mental health stuff, it's obviously yourself, Phil, and Steve, but I've seen you do quite a few podcasts the last probably 6 months. I think like I joked with you, like, I know you've done every podcast known to man when asking you to come on here. But I suppose I kind of wanted to ask, like, is it kind of overwhelming getting like asked to do podcasts and be recognized for stuff that you've been part of creating?
1000%. I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat. Like, I get like the mad imposter syndrome. I never knew what it was until my wife told me what it was. But like, I hate recognition. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an innately like male thing. Like, I like to just be like, right, that's done. What's the next thing? I've fixed the shed. Now I need to go fix the fence. Now I've got to go cut the grass. Then, there's water coming out of the roof. I got to go fix the roof. I don't look back at things with like a huge sense of accomplishment, which is probably something I really need to get better at, because if you don't smell the roses, you'll stop taking care of them after a while. So it is a case of, like I was saying to you earlier, like, I find it cringe listening to myself. Like, I will occasionally listen back to a podcast, like the likes of when we were doing the game in Ireland. Like, once I came back from Ireland, I listened to the podcast back because I was like, that was one of the few occasions where I was a case of just, taking it in and being like, holy shit, this thing that we launched a year ago is taking us to Dublin and played a charity game and all this sort of stuff. But like you said, like, I know yourself, like when you're advertising in the studio, you're not putting yourself front and forward, are you? Like I do find it's a really sort of male thing to not want to be recognized, I guess.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the catch-22 of it, isn't it? Because people buy from people, not like logos.
Yeah.
Like I did a little video recently for the studio, which took like 3 hours to film. Like there was a couple of filmmaking buddies of mine, and like the table was like kind of centered on, and I was like, instead of like, I probably should have wrote like some sort of script or teleprompter thing to like just make it a smoother process. But in reality, I was just thinking, right, okay, so we've got the podcast thing down, mention that it's audio and video, mention the audio, but you know, all these different things. And then like it would take like 10 attempts to get one done. Yeah. And then and like, you know, by the end of it, I was just like praising and it turned out pretty good, to be fair, but it is like, it's almost uncomfortable, isn't it? Like I've always kind of been uncomfortable with that, that kind of motto, sell yourself, right? Like in any kind of format, whether it's like job interviews or, you know, you get told when you're in school, like,
tell me about you. It's like, how about we don't?
Yes.
This is why I talk about football. I don't want to talk about myself.
Yeah. And it's intimidating, isn't it? And it's something that like for the majority of people is just not accustomed to doing, right? Like I think we kind of envy people that do it in a way, like celebrities and stuff like that, because like their whole world revolves around talking about themselves or what they're doing, to the point of where it either goes to like admiration or disdain, you know, like depending on the person.
Well, I mind one of the podcasts I did a while ago, and the guy was like, he's a football vlogger from Scotland, and I was like, oh God, am I? I was like, am I? But like, don't get me wrong, you know, like Blair McAnally, Sam North, like they're fantastic at what they do. They're fantastic at selling themselves and being comfortable to speak on the camera and have the camera on them. And in all honesty, putting themselves out there for when they do go to football games, you know, because everyone gives shit. So the fact that they can do that is like incredible. Well done to them. Like I don't see myself as that. If that's what I am, that's what I am. But like, I don't like to see it in that manner, because at the end of the day, it's about the sort of the football teams and the stories about them and the towns and the people they represent. Like, I'm just some bald guy that lives in Forres. Like, I'm not interested. Like, the interesting part is learning about how Forres Mechanics got like the yellow and brown kits, or how Elgin City lost the title due to nefarious circumstances. All these things, and like why Sir Alex Ferguson has a statue outside of Pittodrie. Those are the stories that are good. Those are the stories that are important.
It is like the storytelling element of it that's appealing, right?
Yeah. So like when I started the page, so like basically during COVID, like I've been quite open about this, funny enough, on podcasts in the studio before. Like during COVID, like, you know, you're locked up all day. I was just sat around drinking all day, you know what I mean? And watching football with no fans on the telly. So when my wife was like, you know, you really need to start channeling that sort of energy into something, you know, something to keep you busy. And that's how it started, with just writing. So writing posts about football teams, pairing them with a whiskey. So like Forres Mechanics with Ben Romack, Glenn Murray with Elgin, you know, the obvious ones. That was just a nice little creative outlet, and being like, oh, you know what? I did something that I enjoy doing, telling stories, getting people like, oh, cool, I've never heard of this team, never seen this team before. It was cool to read about them. And it's just gone from there. It's been great.
Yeah, man. Before we get proper into Scotch and Scarves and all that, I need to ask you something, because I was made aware of something recently, and it was from one of your latest videos. What was it like going to Aberdeen versus Rangers with Craig Uni and Aidan Stephen? That must have been...
Holy shit.
That must have been some experience.
So do you know what's quite funny? So Pittodrie has been like my sort of Moby Dick for a while now. Mm-hmm. And Uni, who comes to Muddy Mental Health, one of our volunteers,
Aberdeen fan.
Massive Don, massive sheepshagger, right? So I said to him near the start of the season, I was like, any chance you can get me a ticket for Aberdeen versus Spartans in the Cup?
All right, okay.
And he goes, no. He was like, you're not going to Pittodrie to watch Aberdeen Scunner Spartans. He's like, hold off. We'll do something. And I think we had planned to go see, it was either Dundee or Dundee United, but the timings didn't work out for some whatever reason. And then he just mentioned, he's like, I can get you a ticket to the Rangers game. And I was like, well now.
Yes. You've piqued my interest, sir.
Yeah, exactly. The last time I was at Pittodrie, Ryan Christie was playing for Aberdeen. So
wow.
it's been a long time. So it was funny. He was like, we're going to go with, my best pal's going to drive us, Aidan Stephen. And I was like, Aidan Stephen, I recognize that name. And he was like, oh, the MMA fighter. And I was like, oh, holy shit. I was like, but it was funny because I was like, oh God, like I'm just a weak beta. Like what am I going to speak to this absolute like monster about? And honestly, we had such great crack. Like, honestly, I'd never met him before, but we were telling each other just like the funniest stories that we had. And by the end of the night, he was like, oh, you got to come to another game with us. So I must have done something right, but it was incredible. And even like, I was worried I was going to, because I took my little retro camera with me and I was convinced, I was like, they're not going to let me take this in. Whereas Aidan managed to get a liter glass bottle of Iron Brew in. And I was like, I might be okay here. And honestly, like we were in I feel bad, I've completely forgotten what end of the stadium it was, but they had the flags.
Yeah.
And like all that sort of stuff. And it was incredible. Like you felt it in like your bones, you know what I mean?
And it was like the perfect game to go to. Obviously, the result being one thing, like, Aberdeen had been, are still flying, but, and obviously Rangers not in the greatest of moments. I think the highlight for me from just seeing the clips and stuff like that, I don't know if you've seen Aidan's story where he's pointing at the Rangers.
Yeah. Oh,
and
so
I think the best thing about the whole thing is there's a guy in front of him that looks around like nervously, thinking like some guy's obnoxiously laughing at him, and then realizes he's pointing at the Rangers end, and like a wave of relief goes over him.
Yeah,
but yeah, an incredibly funny guy, the old phenomenal Mr. Steven. But
he's something else.
What
a guy!
But yeah, like that's kind of, you were obviously making a video at the time as well around that. Like that must have been like just perfect for the.
Honestly, could not have had a better occasion to record an Aberdeen game. Like, honestly, just the whole thing with like, obviously with Thielen in charge now, and it's just totally changed the thing. There's just good vibes back in Aberdeen, and like, yourself, like a lot of Aberdeen fans are just fucking miserable.
Yeah. I've had to go through a lot of shit.
Exactly. They've dealt with a lot of shit these last few years, and fair enough. Like, they're enjoying themselves now, and it's amazing to see. And just being able to, like, being in the trenches and being able to be like, I think it was like 4 rows back from the front and getting a good view of everything. It was, mate, honestly, it was incredible. And it made a fantastic video, actually, somehow. Like, it was quite funny, actually. I didn't realize at the time, but Blair McAnally and Sam North were at the same game, but they were at the back of the stand.
Oh, wow.
So, like, there was like 3 videos came out within the same 24 hours of like Aberdeen Scunner Rangers. Yes. You know what I mean?
The rat race for
content, as we were talking.
I was going to call it the C word, but I thought we might get. I was going to say we'd get demonetized. We'd be lucky if we did get monetized. But but like, I suppose. I mean, I guess what I'm like trying to like get at there is like, do you have like an idea of what someone looks like beforehand, or are you someone that is let's film what I'm going to film and then I'll create something?
So I do kind of have like a weird little structure in place. So like the first 6-7 minutes is going to be about, depending on how big the place is. So the likes of when I went to Rothes, for example, 6-7 minutes, you can't really. So the first 6-7 minutes is like the history of the club, what they're about, all this sort of thing, and where best to go in town for pints and whatever. But the likes of Rothes's ground, I wouldn't get 6 or 7 minutes of footage just from going outside the stadium or the ground, whatever. So like I'll walk about the town, this is the town church, this is the town boozer, all these sort of things. Local distillery, we have loads of them here. So like the first 6-7 minutes is basically me just cutting about. That's literally what it is. It's me cutting about and telling you about why this and this happened, or all these sort of things, their achievements. And then the final 6-7 minutes, the final 6-7 minutes is the game, the atmosphere in the game, and then just sort of like an end credits with a mental health message at the end. So like I have a sort of rough. Do you know what actually inspired it, weirdly enough? See, during COVID when we couldn't go anywhere, I used to watch a shitload of walking tours.
They are incredibly popular on YouTube.
Yes.
Are you talking about someone just going around with like a camera and
a GoPro just walking around Rome? And
yeah.
I was like I was just sat there in my semi-detached house just drinking, being like, oh, Rome looks awesome. I can't wait to go outside again. And that's literally what inspired it, being like, this is the church. This is the town fountain. And all that's basically where like the sort of idea for the 6-7 minutes, because I knew if I wanted to give a good account of the history, I would need like a good 5 minutes of footage, because I couldn't just have a black screen. So that was really sort of the sort of format. It's like half cutting about, half ground match.
I mean, it is crazy how much footage you have to shoot to like make.
Oh, sweet Jesus!
Like I did a documentary a couple of years ago that ended up being about 25 minutes, somewhere along that time. And well, it wasn't just me; it was me and a few other guys. I think we filmed about 5.5 hours and sifted through it all. It was obviously to give ourselves options and stuff like that. Like a lot of kind of like. One of the guys that was making it had literally just got out of university for filmmaking, so like we were kind of taking his lead on how we should work this, and he was like, let's film everything and then make something with it afterwards. And although that process kicked our ass in a lot of ways, it was such a fun process, especially reviewing a lot of the footage back and like seeing a bunch of silly stuff that never made the film, for probably good reasons. But that's the whole, like, this is fun, isn't it? Like for one way or another, like the whole process of making a project is quite cathartic in a way. Like, you know, like it feels therapeutic.
If you explain to someone like, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, oh, I'm editing down a video on Elgin City surviving relegation. They'll be like that's what you're doing for fun. And it's like, oh yeah, I fucking love it. Yeah. It's like it's great because I think I mentioned to you earlier. So my brother studied like theater and stuff like that and production. So like I got a lot of advice from him, and he was like, you know, you got to break it down. He's like, how long do you want each clip to be? And I'm like, 7-8 seconds per clip. And he's like, right, so you need like 7 of those for a minute. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah. So like you break it down into those numbers. And you're just filming anything. Some things turn out good, some great shots, some things turn out like dog shit, but it's fine. And like I enjoy like sort of sifting through it and being like, this works well with this voiceover, I guess. And even like, I mind one of the first times I was like, oh shit, like that's gonna be fucking sick, was Ross Draper's header to save Elgin. Like I got literally, not to rub it into anybody, but I was like in the pitch perfect angle to get it, and I got the whole sequence and everybody celebrating, everybody going nuts, and I was like, fuck yeah. I was like, this is great, and I'm looking forward to 2 weeks time when I can finally get it out for people to see. Oh, I love it, but it can be, there are times where you're just like, fuck it.
There's a love-hate relationship with it a lot of the time, isn't there? Like I've started kind of, not for any kind of professional means or anything, but I've started, because I have like a hybrid cinema camera now, which is for like my videography stuff. Yeah. But it's also very capable in photography as well. And it was something that I've always wanted to get into, but not for like to make money or anything. Simply just to enjoy it and learn something for the sake of, you know, a hobby, rather than like, oh, I need to do this so that I can improve my bit, you know, or any kind of feeling like that. And it is quite like a learning curve, and I get what you mean with like some stuff, because I think in a way, like sometimes you think you've got to shoot everything perfect, when in reality, like you've got to just shoot, and some's going to be great and some's not going to be great, and you've kind of got to just accept that in a way, which can be like, for me especially, like if I feel like I've made a mistake, I'm someone that will beat myself up about that, if you know what I mean. So like it is like it's something that you just have to kind of learn with as you go. I would say, like, become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I know that sounds like something straight from TikTok. It sounds like I'm about to recommend cold water therapy or something, but
and as well, like, I don't know if you're the same as well, but I can be quite stubborn about it. Like, I not like in a dickheadish way, but like I remember Jeff, the Colorado whiskey guy, a YouTuber and guy I follow on Instagram. He's a great lad, and he sent me like a list of things I could do to improve the videos. And I've been open about this at first with him, and I was like, yeah, sound whatever. Like, I was like, you call it soccer. Like, what are you talking about? But he was phenomenally right. And he was telling me like how like people turn off most YouTube videos after like 15 seconds. So if you don't hook them in 15 seconds, then it doesn't matter how good your fucking video is. It's just not going to get the views. It's not going to get the clicks. It's not going to get shared. And it's like stuff like that where you're like, oh, there is like actually like you can't just like make art, not calling it art, but you know, you can't just make something good and expect people to flock to it.
Yeah.
You actually have to convince people this is worth your time. Check it out, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. What are you using to edit photos and videos and stuff like that?
CapCut and the likes of like logos and stuff. I use Canva.
Yeah,
But
it's
good
the
old,
best, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
I mean,
People shit on it, but it's great.
yeah, I do feel bad sometimes because I've heard like so many stories of like graphic designers saying it's putting me out of business, and I feel like I'm kind of, but it is so convenient, isn't it? Like,
oh, it's great. But for like the complicated stuff, my sister actually studied graphic design.
Yeah.
So for the complicated stuff, I'll be like, hey, this is what it looks like in my head. Make work.
yes.
And she's great for that sort of stuff. She's phenomenally talented.
I mean, she's done a few logos for people that have. She did Chris
Bishop Mill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think she did the Football Journals one that Lee did. The new logo
The new
recently.
one. Borough Brigsby.
Obviously, she did Chris's book cover, I believe. As
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And his other podcast as well. I think that was from her. One of the other podcasts I do in here was when they were first starting, they were asking like, what's the kind of process? Because I like to try and walk people through everything because a lot of people want to just get started, and I'm like, look, it's better to be prepared rather than just like record something and have to wait 3 weeks for it to actually be put up. You know what I mean? Especially if you're speaking about topical stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. News is over. So 24-hour news cycle, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So I mentioned getting a logo done, and they were like, "Oh, do you recommend anyone?" And it wasn't too long after Chris's book launch, I actually think. And I remember him thanking your sister and stuff like that. And Chris had just recently started coming in here. And I knew that they knew Chris through some avenue. I can't remember how. Yeah, because he was friends with Chris's son. So I said to get in touch with Chris to get in. And literally the day later they had it. And I was like, this is nuts. You know what I mean?
Well, like the Scotch and Scarves logo, she designed that completely. Like I was just like, I had a really terrible like whiskey bottle and a football, like really, you know, like Microsoft Paint style.
Yeah.
And she was like, if you're gonna like make a go of this, like, can I please just do you a logo? And knocked it out in like 20 minutes, and I was like, fantastic.
Yes, convenience.
Like there is still a need for graphic designers. Canva's great, but you know,
yeah, it still has its limits. I've tried like the AI generated image stuff.
Sweet. Oh, it's
and
like
that does give me comfort. You know, when they like try and like say AI's taking over, I'm like,
yeah,
not quite yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like you'll say like, I always describe it as like just like soup.
Yes.
Because, like there's been times we've used it for like stuff to do with a club, and I'll put like, can you like have a stadium of soccer fans with like pink flags, and you just see it and their faces are like, you know, like drooping, and it's like they've got like 17 fingers, and you're like, oh sweet Jesus.
Yes, this has not worked out well. There's also,
put it down now.
I also watched a tutorial on how to do the Cartoonify app thing they've got in there now, where you take an image of someone and it turns them into a cartoon.
Oh, God.
And this tutorial, it came out perfect. So I think it was one of the guys that comes in here, Dominic.
Barstow. Yeah.
He was looking to kind of relaunch his podcast from a few years ago, and he was like, I want a new logo and stuff. And he was like, I like a little kind of, he paid someone on, was it Fiverr for like £30 to do it, and let's just say didn't turn out how he wanted it. Why
do you see this?
I think it was him sat at this table, but instead of the studio logo, it was just like the old logo. And he said, I said to him, a little nod, not it to be the 75% of the new, you know. So I said, I'll just do something simple. I'll just like cut the text out, and I'll just use the background of it, and we'll have you sat with a microphone or something. He's like, yeah, that'll work. And I was like, I'll maybe do the cartoonify thing, because I've seen this tutorial. And I was like, this will go fine. No,
monstrosity.
I was like, we're just going to use you, because the cartoonify thing was funny, but you know, that's not the aim of. I suppose if we're talking about eye catching, like making people laugh, maybe. But
well, me and my wife were talking about this the other day. Like we were on about like why adverts are so weird, but we were saying like I said to her, I was like, advert with a gorilla playing the drums, and she's like, Cadbury's, and I was like, that's exactly why they do stupid shit.
Yeah,
because your brain immediately goes, oh yeah,
it's memorable, and it's out there. Yeah. I remember as a kid, like especially with like you know, not to single anyone out, but boomers. Like, I remember like my nan like ranting at the TV, like, what the hell's like a cartoon bunny got to do with Duracell batteries and stuff like that? You know what I mean? But like, there is a method behind the madness to it all.
There is a science that we're not privy to. You know what I mean?
So like, obviously you use a retro camera for these kinds of projects. What made you want to do that? Is it as simple as, because it's, from the outside looking in, it kind of sounds like a really original idea. It doesn't seem like many people are doing something like that. Or was it just like as simple as, I'm not going to expend a couple hundred, or well, nowadays it can be even 1,000 for like what people are using for like social media and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, basically, so for the trip to Ireland, I ended up, that was it. So at my wedding, we had like these like not Polaroid cameras, you know, the click wheel cameras.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had them at my wedding. And then when we were going to Ireland with the football team, I was like, you know what? This would be really cool for like, actually like putting in like, having these like printed out. So like hand the boys a camera after the game, they could take photos in the bar. And, you know, it's like, it's not like, so, you know, obviously when you're like taking a photo on an iPhone, everyone sees the iPhone and they turn to the iPhone and start getting their poses ready. Yeah. At least with a click wheel camera, it's like, you know, bang. And you don't know if it's good, you don't know if it's bad. So we did that. And when the pictures came back from Ireland, completely forgot that you actually had to manually use the flash. That was on me. So like half the photos were like just black.
Yeah.
But some of the photos, they were just like, they had this like sort of dark, sort of washed out color to them, and you're just like, it felt nostalgic, even though it was for something obviously in 2024. And I just love that. And I was like, oh, you know what? It'd be really cool. Like doing this at the football. Like I regularly go to Forest Mechanics, unfortunately. No, I'm only kidding. I love you, cans. So I go down quite regularly, and I was like, this would be really cool. But the only trouble was it costs like £30 to get each one developed.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't be affording that every time I go to the football. But Phil, obviously a co-founder of Muddy Mental Health with me, he was like, have you seen this? And it's like one of those click wheel cameras, but someone's put in like a USB so you can connect it to your computer.
Oh, right, cool.
So it's literally like an old camera, but someone's just
meeting of two worlds.
Yeah, it's incredible. So it was like 50 quid. And like, I just loved how it turned out. And like, I love the idea of just being like, took a photo, no idea if it's going to be good, but it's going to be cool. It's going to be realistic because there's no sort of planned sort of framework to these things. Like, it's not as if I'm, like when I'm filming, for example, like, and I'm framing a shot, I'm getting the lighting okay. And, you know, is there like anything loud that I need to wait to pass? It's like with the camera, just click, sweet, let's see how it turns out. And I've really enjoyed doing it, actually, because I don't know if you're the same, obviously, in the content world, but like sometimes I go to like events and I'm like, I could have made something, I could have filmed something, I could have taken photos. So it's been actually quite nice to being able to go to the football, and it's literally like a camera. I'm not looking at a screen. It's a nice feeling to be able to be like, I can still just keep my phone on silent, take this thing out, and I'm not being distracted by, oh, look, there's a dog on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then I've missed 5 minutes of Forest Mechanics getting smashed by turf.
Yeah.
So it's been really enjoyable, and I like being able to change it up a wee bit. So like I was actually meant to be filming an away days with Clack. I'd sorted something out with them, but unfortunately it got snowed off. So I'm starting to plan out my calendar for next year. But even still, with Clack being cancelled, I went back to Forest at the weekend just past. And ended up just taking photos again. It was great, and I'm probably done with like Christmas working hours and stuff. Yeah. I'm probably done for the year making anything, so it was a nice little thing to end on. So
yeah, definitely. And like a lot of like the shots come out, and there's like a lot of like, you know, it's like I'm trying to like think of a word here, but it's like very colorful. You know, there's multiple colors in like the sky. You know what I mean? And I know there's obviously grading and stuff like that goes into it, but it's a very unique look as compared to like slapping a color profile on something on Lightroom, for example, and you know, off of a Sony A,
like some filter.
Yeah. And to be fair, even like I think like one of the kind of not pessimistic thing about cameras these days is like phone cameras have gotten so good.
Oh
that,
yeah.
like some people can get like the shot and then put it through Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever, and see someone put something up on Instagram straight to their phone and like get downhearted of like, I've put all this work in and like Apple have just done everything for this part, you know. And like I think me and a friend were talking about we're trying to outrun technology with more technology. You know? But it is like a really unique look from what I've seen from the page and like all the shots that you get and stuff like that. Like there's not something that I see out there that I can.
Well, do you know what's really surprised me is the amount of like sort of, I hate saying it. I'll just say young people. So I'm talking like maybe 25 years old and younger, right? Who didn't grow up with these sort of click wheel cameras or having to send the camera off in the post or put it into boots, wait a week for it to be developed. Like these sort of people that never had to experience that, and they're actually really enjoying, even though like to some people it might look terrible because it's sort of, you know, like you're saying, the lighting's not perfect, the angle's not perfect, there's streakiness coming from the floodlights.
But I think that adds to it though. Like
I love it.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, the amount of young, because I put it up on TikTok, and I'm not very good at TikTok, so I'll just put #football, #Scotland, and then just see what happens. And the amount of like young people that will reshare, like, leave nice comments, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, it's not a perfect 4K picture, and they really enjoy it. I find it quite interesting, actually. I'd love to know how, I don't know if it's a case of they're nostalgic for something through, I don't know if it's like secondhand nostalgia. That's probably not even a thing. But you know, like when people watch Friends.
Right, yeah.
And then they're like, you know, you'd have to page somebody to get them to phone you from a landline. And like people, like, because Netflix, put out something saying like Friends is still the #1 watched show. And like, you know, anyone born after 2001 never grew up with it. So
it's like a look into it sounds mental.
A time capsule sort of thing.
Into the old world a little bit, doesn't it? Because the kind of leap in everything from the millennium onwards has been pretty.
It's been mental.
Yeah, probably even from like 2007. When the iPhone came along, the first one I remember seeing was like 2007 time.
And it had the beer app where you could pretend to drink a beer.
Yeah. That reminds me of the Johnny Vegas game. Do you ever remember that? Where it would be a cartoon version of him and he would be steaming and you'd have to like hold the pint correctly and not drop the beer and stuff.
I don't remember
that. But before we kind of move on to like the Murray mental health stuff, there's just a couple of things like, so obviously you've done so many teams and it goes from like really kind of famous names like Roma and Red Star Belgrade and, you know, locally Inverness, but there's teams that like people have never heard of before that you'll give a lot of info about, like Vermont FC was one of the ones in that. What's the team that you've personally learned the most about when you've done a project? Like who's a team that you probably didn't know as much about going into it and then through the research and that?
So funny enough, is probably actually my favorite video that I've done as well. So Isle of Vale in Keith.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
the junior side.
Yes. So I had never, like you say, like I've done videos on like Aberdeen, Arsenal, like all these big teams, but like my brother-in-law is goalie at Isle of Vale, and I hadn't heard of them until I like, you know, became part of that family. I didn't know who Isle of Vale was, and he was telling me for ages. He's like, come down, you know, we'll give you, you know, good treatment. He knew I liked making videos and stuff like that, and he was like, you know, just come on down. And I timed it perfectly with them winning the league. So the likes of, I was researching for the video, and then it's like, wow, wait, Colin Hendry played for Isle of Vale?
Yeah.
Like before, I think he then moved to Keith, and then he moved to Dundee, I believe. So it's like, oh, you know, like he's played for Isle of Vale, like all this sort of stuff. And like, yeah, and then just getting to experience that entire day as well with filming the game. I met a few followers that I said I was going down to Isle of Vale to see them win the league. A few followers messaged and were like, oh, you know what? It'd be nice to see you, nice to meet you, that sort of stuff. So that was great. Like again, like what we were saying earlier, it kind of felt cringe, but at the same time, it was like a nice feeling that people are like, they enjoy your work enough that they want to meet you and put a name to the face. So that was great. And then after the game, they had fireworks going off. Probably not legally, but that's by the by. They had pyro going. There was bottles of bubbly going, and I managed to capture all that on video. And that's a nice feeling because I like to think in my own head, whether or not it's the case or not. But like obviously, with Isle of Vale winning the league, boys move to the Highland League. Boys might move to another team that offers a bit more money or, you know, a bit more ease of work. Some of the boys stay. So like that entire team is no longer together. But if they're ever like fancying it, they can sort of just go on the channel, rewatch the video and be
relive the memory.
Relive the memory. And I that's my favorite thing about it, is being like, these boys, and like I had like the squad list at the end and being like, congratulations, we are going up, that sort of stuff. And I love the idea of whether they do it or not, whether they're watching it in 5 years, whether they watch it in 10 years, whether they watch it weekly, whatever it is. It's like it's nice in my head to think that they would look back at that and be like, yeah, that was class. I'm glad I got to relive that day.
In more depth than has ever been available, right? With obviously the likes of, you know, you look at memories from like the 90s, it's obviously photos, but photos only go so far, where videos obviously are more kind of, you know, I suppose photos can be used for storytelling as well, but video definitely goes more into
and
depth about it.
Memory, I think, like you're saying, with technology getting better and better, these teams like Isle of Vale that play in the, 7th division or 7th tier in Scotland, whatever you would say, like their stories, their achievements can be showcased, they can be advertised. Funny enough, with the September game with Colin Hendry, I was like, oh, by the way, I filmed a video on Isle of Vale if you fancy watching it. It's like
sweetening him up.
Yeah, exactly. And like he never would have thought when he was 16, 17-year-old playing for Isle of Vale that
he would captain Scotland at the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be a nice little memory for him, sat in his big house in Blackburn, Manchester, wherever it is. Like, it might be nice. I have no idea if he ever watched it. I like to think he did. But it might be nice for him to go, oh, you know what? Like, it was nice, you know, sort of and allowing him to relive his memories with Isle of Vale as well.
Yeah.
But I always just find, like, the smaller teams, like, their story is just as interesting, if not more interesting, than your sort of behemoth teams, your big teams that are just, you know, content and marketing machines, just constantly churning out everything. And, you know, what's Andrew Robertson's reaction to a dog falling in a puddle? You know
Nivea
what I mean?
Commercials at all sorts.
And the Google Pixel commercials and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. So we'll move on to Murray mental health, because we're nearly at 50 minutes already. Time flies when we just start talking. It? But we have about 20, 25 minutes left. So I want to ask, I think you've been on enough podcasts that most people who listen to this know why the club was started and the origin story behind that. But I guess because I know you've said, and when I've been producing stuff that you've been on and stuff like that, is the kind of original idea was like a talk club, but then you all kind of thought, well, if I wouldn't personally go to like a talk club, because you know, I think it's quite an intimidating prospect. The idea is good, but kind of going somewhere with the intention of speaking about
design is perfect, but execution is
it's I think the way that someone like football or just any sport or any kind of activity, it's a bit more organically brings out people talking, to where it's not like so pressurized, like I'm meeting a bunch of strangers and I'm going to talk about, I'm
going to go tell them about these terrible things that have happened to me, these people I've never met, and or I might or even worse, I might bump into somebody I know, and then they'll know that I'm this, that, and the other, and it's a lot of pressure to put on someone like that. Like you say, that was the sort of original idea that we thought, oh, that'd be great. I don't think there's anything like this in Forres or Elgin. And it turns out there is, and they do amazing, the James Support Group, Murray Men Talk. Obviously, Mikey's Line are now in Elgin as well, which is fantastic to see. But we thought, we were like you say, it's just like, it's difficult. And I know myself, like, I'm less likely to talk about something if I'm being forced to, or,
there's like a
goaded to talk about something,
like an expectation.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas it like being part of a community, you're more inclined to tell stuff to friends than you are straight. I mean, it works both ways, I suppose, because you're more inclined to tell friends stuff that's bothering you, but sometimes it can be comforting talking to, like, I think that's why like stuff like Breathing Space and Mikey's Lines web chats are so kind of popular, because it takes that intimidating factor of seeing someone or speaking to someone on the phone, but being able to express to someone without judgment and having like an outlet, you know, and that is a complete stranger, that there is no kind of you know, just any kind of fear of judgment or something like that in that kind of scenario. So like, I think it is definitely something that just eases people in more, and obviously user
it gets people to lower their guard a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. And like user connected with Mikey's Line and stuff like that as well. So there is the ability.
We can sort of guide if need be, but it's with so the likes of what we've been going about. So June last year was the first Kickabout, and like since then, like I've gotten to know so many of these boys that come down, and the idea that obviously like I didn't know these guys a year ago, and now I'm having heart-to-heart conversations with them after a good victory or a tough loss, like in Ireland. Like everybody was, it's hard not to get down when you lose, but it's not about that. It was about the camaraderie and, you know, experiencing something together that no one thought was possible. And yeah, just like the fact that within a year, like these boys, like if I did have a problem, or vice versa, like I'm more than happy to speak to them about those sorts of things, and everybody else is the same. Like I remember I was having a tough week. I think like work was tough, and like I think like something got cancelled, like content wise and whatever. There was something going on, and I was like, "Here, boys, I'm going incognito for a few days. I'm all good, but just, you know, in case I don't answer." And I think about 8 or 9 of them like sent me a message being like, "Everything okay?" All this, and that's a nice feeling. Like I find it, certainly in my own experiences, I don't know if many people are the same. I had never really wanted to like burden friends and family with what was going on. But like the toughest thing for me, so the way my head works is I don't think anyone likes me at any time whatsoever. It's a weird thing to describe, but like Phil and Steve will tell you, and my boys, my friends that live further afield now, like I'll just message them randomly, and I won't be like, "Hey, how's you?" I'll be like, "Hey, are we still cool?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course." Like, "Is everything all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, all good." Is that because I just like I need to like my brain just goes, you know your friends don't like you.
Yeah,
like it's the nastiest thing. The nastiest things in your life will come from your own head rather than someone else saying
the inner
shit
critic
to you.
and the distorted thinking and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So like every so often, like I'll like my friends will be like, "Oh, you know, is everything okay?" Like, you know, it's a weird text to be getting out of the blue, but it's like I just need to sort of remind myself. And it's great, like having like obviously the Murray Mental Health here now, because it's like, obviously it's the community aspect and they're local. And, you know, if I am having a stressful week, you know, you've got the football and the chats that come with it and the sort of the looseness of it to make things, like you say, sort of lower your guard, really. Yeah.
And it's cool as well, like even though you're one of the creators along with Steve and Phil, that it's also been beneficial for your own mental health as well. It's like been a good ecosystem in that sense for everyone that's involved with the you know, obviously the club and the kickabouts. And I suppose going forward as well, like I've seen a few times that like, I guess this is just down to like facility availability and space and stuff like that sometimes you've had to cap numbers or, you know, no, don't want to say you've put people on a waiting list. That seems a bit too formal, but like,
No.
Is that becoming more and more of a challenge to like keep meeting the demand of people that want to join the kickabouts and stuff and finding adequate kind of facilities for that?
Obviously when we started it, I think we've maybe had a dozen, and 6 or 7 of them we were like, we need you to come down so it doesn't look like we're just like 3 boys just stood there in our old made kits just like waiting for people to turn up. So to see how quickly that grew, it's definitely been the biggest challenge because we never had a plan for it to be successful.
Yeah.
We just wanted to do something good. If after 6 months it was, you know, it got a bit of traction, we'd keep it going. Because basically we had like Steve fronted the money, and once that money ran out, if we didn't have anything to replenish it, then
that was it.
It didn't matter if it was successful because we'd have no more money to actually do anything. And obviously Paul Lynch at Soccer Sevens, you know, has helped us with helping us at Grant Park. It's been fantastic, and that's been great because obviously you get like the 3-4 pitches. So that's been ideal. The worst part is when the clocks change and it's darker.
Yeah.
It's muddier. The pitches need to
more
heal.
chance of snow and all that type of stuff
Yeah.
as well.
And even so, like trying to get facilities, you'll know yourself with Bishop Mill. Facilities are like it's a proper Hunger Games style trying to get that booking. And then it's like, sweet, what have we got available this week? 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. It's like, no chance. No one's coming down. And even then, there's the cost element as well. So you're talking, what, well over 100 quid?
And even like, I've filmed a few welfare games this year, and some of the state of the council pitches as well is like ridiculous, you know?
Yeah.
Like I can't remember specifically. There was one, I think it was Elgin Thistle put up, but I was at one in the, you know, the pitch behind the Esso in Elgin.
Yeah.
I was there, and like all
where the Ford garage is. Yeah.
And all the grass hadn't been cut and stuff, and like, you know, we had a couple of the Lost United guys in a few months ago.
Listen, great episode.
And they were saying that like that pitch that they have is still a council pitch, but Lost United, you know, keep the pitch and make sure, because that pitch is like
it's immaculate.
Yeah,
they do a fantastic job of that.
So it's mad that like the council won't let them actually buy the land off them or whatever.
Well, land's just the biggest commodity, isn't it? Like, anyone wants land has got like thousands of years of red tape together. But that's the biggest problem. Like, we've had to start our Christmas break early, well, like 2-3 weeks early, because literally weeks of availability is totally full.
Yeah.
Unless we like try and get Inverness, but then you're like, or even Inverness, like there's like Inverness Thistle have just popped up. They're a new club that's formed and going into the juniors. So that's another person, another team using the pitch. And you know, it's great. Like, we need more teams. We need more people getting involved in sport. But there's just no facilities in Murray there's those like really weird like hockey pitch.
Yeah.
And like your knees for like the next 4 days are like, you know, like Rice Krispies.
Hanging by a thread. Yeah. I mean that's the thing. Like, because of Dominic's experience working with he's now working at Elgin City, but he previously did work at ESCT, and Lee was a coach in that. They've had a good relationship to where, you know, they've managed to sort out the Gleaner for a lot of the Bishop Mill stuff. I think they train at the high school though. I don't know if that's been changed recently. I'd have to look at the board meeting chat. But like, I suppose as well, like, it must have been like quite a big logistical challenge as well to begin with, just to be like starting something, right? Like, I mean, there's obviously like putting yourself out there again, which is uncomfortable enough, but then booking facilities and then trying to hope that there's enough of an interest to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I spoke to someone, Will Hall. He was actually the Press and Journal. He started a talk club, which is like a UK wide kind of mental health charity, and it was actually the only one in Scotland, I think, because he was like a rower, but like at a really high level in university and stuff that. And he came up from, I think it was Sussex or something like that. Forgive me, I'd have to go back and listen to the episode. But he was saying for like weeks, like no one was showing up, and it probably was a result of that whole thing that we talk about of people, you know, looking and being like, I really need this, but not taking that step at the fear of the external kind of stuff that's going on. But he said like when he started kind of implementing stuff like going for a walk or playing frisbee and really simple things like that, that it started more people, because again, it was like you know, easing into...
It's a vehicle. Yeah. It's a Trojan horse, so to speak. Yeah.
I guess it cuts the ice in a way, right? Because I suppose it is quite a, you know, fragile environment if you're going to talk about your mental health and you know everyone else is there for that reason as well, right? Yeah. And I guess that can be quite intimidating, especially first meeting, where like these things build like a rapport with everyone to the point it feels more natural to begin with, right? So was it like a slow starter to begin with, or was it just a hit straight away? Like, so
I would say STV News helped us out massively. So basically, I made a Twitter and Instagram and a Facebook for the club, right? And Nicola McCallie at STV News was like, "Oh, are you like a new mental health group?" And I sort of explained what we were trying to do. This is before we'd had any kickabouts whatsoever. So we didn't really know ourselves what we wanted the sort of layout experience to be. We didn't know if we would have the money to, keep it going long term. And she's like, oh, perfect. I'd love to come down and film you. And we were like, oh, we need to come up with something slick. And thankfully we got the Gleaner as well. So we had actually a really good, because the Gleaner is fantastic.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
an amazing facility. So the fact that we could we were recorded on that. We had the kits as well, which I think weirdly gave us a bit of legitimacy. I wasn't just there in my Stone Roses Man United kit. So I think the legitimacy that came with the STV News interview massively helped, because from then on we'd never had less than 15 people.
Yeah.
So at the minimum we had a 7-a-side game every single time, and the fact that it's now grown to the point where you're talking 40 to 50 pretty much every time is fantastic. And the good part is as well, it's a mixture of people. So we've got people up in age, we've got 18-year-olds, we've got people that have severe mental health problems, have come back from addiction issues, some people that are, bereaved, or even we've had messages to the Facebook page and saying, I don't have any friends.
Yeah, I remember you saying. Yeah.
I've moved here from such and such, Sussex, something like that. I've moved up here. I don't know anybody. I've started a new job. I just want to have that interaction with people. There's such a massive mixture. And the fact, we weren't even meant to be a football team. That was Chris Saunderson's idea. He was just when he interviewed us for the Northern Scot, he was like, you ever thought about doing a charity game for money? And we were like, now we do.
Yeah, because I think Highland News and Media done a few of them as well. Did they not get a team together?
They played the Police, didn't they?
Yeah.
Butter Briggs.
I would like to see them play the Press and Journal. That would have been the real Barbie.
That would have been like the Anchorman fight, wouldn't it? Where'd you get a hand grenade? But no, we weren't even meant to be a charity team. And in that time now, we've had 50 boys represent the club on the pitch and raise money for charity. And that's I heard this on a podcast years ago, and this is what sort of got me into the Scotch and Scarf stuff as well as Murray Mental Health. So one of the things they said for yourself I think they said to be happy, but I might be misplaying it in my head, but they said you need a creative outlet and you need a generosity outlet or a charitable outlet. So Scotch and Scarves is my hobby, is something that motivates me and gets my creative juices flowing and trying this, trying that. And Murray Mental Health is a nice feeling because it's that giving back. And, there's no better feeling than when someone, says you've done a good thing for them. And it's amazing. And being able to have the two while challenging, and my loving, darling wife, don't know how she puts up with it, because if I'm not doing Murray Mental Health stuff, I'm video editing or I'm walking the dog. So bless her, I don't know how she puts up with it, but having those two things, has been fantastic for me, really.
And I think obviously we can talk about the charity games and I will do in a minute, and obviously the money that you've raised for the likes of Mikey's Line and stuff like that. But I think the biggest achievement that I see from it personally, and I guess I have a little bit of an inside perspective to this, because on Chris's personal podcast, he has a lot of the guys from the side on, and the guys talk about a lot of the stuff that they've been through and things of that nature, or the origin story of why they reached out to become a member of the club and that. And for me, it just seems it's built a really great sense of community, and that is something obviously in the modern day world with technology, with social media, it is kind of subconsciously and subtly putting people barriers in front of people a lot of the time.
One of the best things I ever heard is we've never been more connected but further apart.
100%, yeah.
And I feel that completely. You can get lost in your phone, you know what I mean? And there's a whole generation of people that are especially the youngsters these days, that have grown up with a phone from adolescence all the way through. And my wife's a teacher, she sees it human interaction's different now.
Yeah.
Us two talking in the studio, that could terrify some people.
Yeah, yeah.
With or without a microphone. So the fact that a lot of these boys that come down, you know, wouldn't have dared spoke, and now they're going on a podcast and talking about pouring their heart out. Like it's like Jason and Steve, who you had on, who were on Chris's podcast recently. I was almost in tears listening to Jason. Honestly, like that got me right in the chest.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm someone I quite tend to zone out when I'm doing these things, because like people will ask me like, what was Almain like, or that must have been cool having Pele Patterson, and I try and like not think like that, because I just want to be zoned.
You're doing
in
a job,
doing
a job,
but you know, there is times like, and especially just hearing, it's a good story, and because it just came across as so brave to talk about that, and where Jason is now, if you know what I mean, compared to like where stuff maybe wasn't going as well for him at the time, and it was quite wholesome to hear that. Do you know what I mean? And that's just the kind of ecosystem that these types of things breed, and it is a breath of fresh air from probably not the old world, but just in a world of where, you know, it is quite evident that like men do struggle to kind of express these types of things. Like I listened to a podcast, you know, the South African comedian Trevor Noah used to be,
The Daily Show.
Yeah. He was on that Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and he was talking about like with men and that, like, we never really say what we really feel out of like for example, if like a mate says something derogatory, like, you know, you're a fucking idiot or whatever it may be, like we never say what we really feel inside, like that actually hurt me, man, what you said there. We're like, no, I'm going to outside right now, we're going to like fight about it. Do you know what I mean? Like that is like stuff that, like, just the way that society has just kind of fallen into has been taught like that's just how men are, rather than like, no, you can actually sit and have a chat with a mate, you know, and
I feel bad because I can't remember who it was, but I remember like someone was saying, I think it was a comedian, and he was saying like, if your partner, for example, she puts up a picture on Instagram, she's got her whole list of friends going, beautiful, amazing, stunning, all this sort of stuff. Love you, girl.
Yeah.
Like a man uploads a picture and they're lucky if their mate likes it.
Yes.
And I mind the comedian was like, why don't you call me beautiful? Why don't none of my mates call me beautiful? And it's joking, but at the same time, it is like...
There's a serious undertone.
There's a serious, phenomenal.
There's the whole kind of expectation of stoicism and kind of being not detached from emotion, but like you said, like women are definitely more open to like showing that affection, I would say, right?
Oh,
whereas
completely.
like men towards each other, it's like lads banter and all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for that as well, for sure, and joking and stuff. But there is like, we've kind of lost that human to human connection in a way,
and it has kind of it's you can see it in politics these days. Like the two sort of ends of the spectrum have gone so far apart. It's either toxic masculinity or something else. It's like, I like a good fart joke.
Yeah.
I like a good ribbon.
Yeah.
But there is times where it's like, so one of the things I love about the club is a lot of sort of maybe the older members of the group, not like taking the younger ones under their wing, but like say when we were in Ireland, just like, you know, this is how you get through an airport. This is how you don't, crash and burn at 10 p.m. when you've had too much to drink, pacing yourself. Like there's that sort of, I don't even know what you'd call it, like sort of like not mentorship, because that sounds like business speak, but the connection between young and old, I've really enjoyed seeing, because you've got the young lads introducing like, I don't know, like Riz and all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
And then you got the older guys, and it comes together a lot more. Like if we keep stuff like the toxic masculinity stuff is a massive problem.
Yeah.
But that is a case of men separating and speaking over the internet.
Yes.
Rather than getting in a room, getting on a football pitch and actually just like thrashing stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. So one last question before my final question, and it is to do with like the trips away and the charity games and stuff like that. And it's just simply, could you ever have imagined like stuff like this it would get to this kind of magnitude of what it's become?
Absolutely not. So I've got one of the first things I ever got when I was a kid, when I got into football, was a book, and it was The Stars of World Cup 98.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, right. And Scotland, I think, had 3 players in it: Jim Leighton, McAllister, and Colin Hendry. Yeah, you knew that was coming. So the idea that it's got to the point where we could pull in someone like Colin to help us raise money for charity, playing at Mossad Park, which I've been going to since I was like 12 years old or whatever it is. Like, I know I said earlier, like, I don't tend to look back on stuff. I just sort of move on to the next thing. But it really fills my heart up when I get to look back at that and think, I got to like play on a football pitch with like this guy who I was looking at in a book when I was 7. He must have thought I was a dickhead, by the way, because I was running around trying to get stuff organized, and someone was like, by the way, Colin Hendry's here. And I was like, how you doing? And then just like sort of ran away to organize more stuff.
Sent me an email about Isle of Ale and all sorts, and now when he looked at me.
Didn't even say hello. He just ran off. And then, yeah, and the whole situation with like being able to go to Ireland, and like some of the boys in the squad, they hadn't even left the country. They didn't have passports.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh yeah. We managed to get that sorted, thankfully. But like, it's incredible and still doesn't hugely feel real.
Mm.
Obviously, there's some breaking news that Steve probably announced on the Football Journals, which will be coming out soon.
Tonight. As we're recording on Patreon if you pay for it.
Exactly. So like, even that's amazing as well. Like Steve's taking the front on that one, but like that's going to be incredible as well. And there's exciting things to come in Murray Mental Health. We'll be playing at Borough Briggs in April. That's going to be an amazing feeling as well.
That's amazing, man.
Like over the moon with that.
Can you imagine if you play around that time if Elgin go up? Because I mean, I don't want to jinx it or anything. Touch wood right now.
Oh, I can.
And you know, like they've just been drawing Aberdeen at home in the Scottish Cup.
That's gonna be incredible.
That's going to be an amazing.
I'm going to be tapping up Saunderson to get me into that game.
Yeah, I'm just imagining seeing Aidan Stephen in a half and half scarf.
I did. You know what? I did actually think last night. I was like, I wonder who he'll be rooting for.
Yeah,
I have a weird feeling it might be Aberdeen though.
Yeah, he's got. Yeah. Oh well.
No, like honestly, even though like what happened in 2024 we never expected. So what the hell could be coming next year is a great feeling. And even like with yourselves and like Bishop Mill, like I'm excited to see how you guys get on in 2025, and it's going to be incredible to watch that grow as well.
Yeah, the Doms. It's crazy, like because like when I've been doing some of the video, this is the first time that first of all, I could never imagine Lee raising his voice, and I've seen that, and you know I've experienced that now. But at the same time, like it was the first time seeing Dominic coach, and Dominic's still like an incredibly young guy. He's just turned 18.
Yeah, that's mad.
I think like the press in general said he might. Well, I think he potentially is the youngest manager in Scottish football. Which
did he not beat the record of the boy at Lossy United?
Yeah,
or am I making that
7
up?
years old, 7 by 7 years or something. It's crazy, and it's mad how like commanding and like assertive he is with guys that are 30s, late 20s, early 20s. It's mental, like, and they listen to him and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely interesting.
Well, from what I hear, he's a hell of a coach. So yeah, you know, I think regardless of your age, if you can actually talk the talk, walk the walk, then you'll get that respect.
Yeah.
But you know yourself, football players of any level, you know, pros all the way down to juniors, etc. They know when someone's not got the.
They can sense it. It's a human
blood
thing,
in the water thing. You just know, like, you don't know what you're talking about, or you've not got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's been an hour and 20 minutes, mate. That seems like it is absolutely flown by. Thank you very much for coming on. I know you've been on a lot of podcasts recently, but thank you very much for the kind of relaunching of this that I've been on a bit of a hiatus for.
No, thank you for having me.
Do have one question. So I apologise, Stephen Bartlett. I have seen your idea. I'm kind of copying it here, but it is not really to kind of copy it. It's just because I find it a really interesting idea. So my plan from now on is every guest that I have on, without the knowledge of who the next guest is going to be, I'm going to get them to leave a question in a book for them to answer in the next episode. And I'm not even going to see it until the next episode. But because there has been no previous guest before you, I thought I would start the ball rolling with a question.
And then I will ask a question, will I?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll let you write it in the book and you can sign it, because I thought it'd be like a cool... We're talking about memories, right?
I've actually got, weirdly, an idea's just come into my head as well.
Awesome. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
So the question that I have, and this is just something that just came off the top of my head as well, is if you could go back and say sorry to someone in your life, who would that person be and why?
Oh God. The 2010s were a bit of a write-off for me, so there's probably quite a few people. One, I know, again, this is going to sound proper beta material. Like I'm going to get rinsed for this. Ex-girlfriends. I was not a good boyfriend in the 2010s. I was more interested in getting fucked up.
Right, yeah.
And watching football.
Okay.
So if I dated you between the years of 2009 and say 2019, you get my utmost apologies.
Okay, so it's not even one person, it's about multiple people.
Just women. I just apologize to women in general. Yeah, I was not a good boyfriend. I think I'm a good person. I just wasn't a good boyfriend.
Yeah.
So apologies to
learning experiences, right?
Exactly. Well, I'm married now, so I can't have done too badly.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on, dude. I know you're a busy guy with the multiple projects that you've got going on.
No, absolute pleasure, man. I love speaking to yourself, Lee, Chris. Obviously, I'll come in whenever needed.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for you to come on the art of casual conversation. You have to tick them all off.
And like Infinity Stones.
Yeah, you're like halfway through. If you're still kicking about since the last 3 months since I uploaded one of these, we're still on all the platforms, 5-star rating, Spotify, Apple, if you'd be so kind, and all that YouTube jazz. And I'm going to try and get 3 out before the end of the year, including this one. So hopefully we'll see you soon.